You're listening to Health Professional Radio. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Imagine a liquid biopsy test, the results of which would allow physicians to evaluate chemotherapy for every patient in real time. Well, Richard Brand is joining us here on the program. He's joining us from DiaCarta Incorporated to talk about some recent data that was published in Nature Scientific Reports that has to do with QuantiDNA. Welcome to Health Professional Radio. Richard, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. You're right, Neil. The academic researchers have been pointing out since as long ago as 2014 that chemotherapy, certainly can have some adverse effects for some of the patients. Mm-hmm. And in a study done in the UK with 2,000 breast cancer patients, 900 male lung cancer patients, 5% of the patients were actually dying from the treatment, not from the cancer. And until now, the only way to know if a patient was in that cohort that was highly sensitive would be after the 30-day treatment protocol, which by then, we have the adverse effect, and that's what we want to avoid by being able to do it in real time, as you said.
What is DiaCarta's goal, and what is your role there?
Well, the goal is to personalize a part of cancer therapy that's been very tried and true and is still prescribed for over half the patients, even with personalized medicine in cancer treatments. Still, over 50% of cancer patients get either chemo or radiation therapy or both. And until now, it's been a little bit of a matter of guesswork about how much to dose and how frequently, or a one-size-fits-all approach. And we've found from the studies that others have done is that the one-size-fits-all approach is adverse for a certain portion of the population. Myself, I'm the chief financial officer, so I'm the person who tries to oversee the administrative side of the business, information technology, and accounting and the like, and such that we can prepare our results on a financial basis to demonstrate what we're doing to the financial community.
You talked a bit about the hit and miss when it comes to treatment for cancer. This one size fits all isn't the way to go. And you say, of course, that you've learned from other studies, but conducted your own studies, and some of this data has been published in Nature Scientific Reports concerning one of your products. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. We're building on the shoulders of other researchers who have pointed out the problem. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, with our markers and our approach, we can provide a first ever solution, such that we propose that during a 30-day treatment cycle, maybe 3 of our tests are done, 1 beforehand to establish baseline, and 1 48 hours or sooner after the first treatment, and then 1 subsequently. But with that test 48 hours after first treatment, that's when we can ascertain that the normal dosage of chemotherapy for that patient is either correct or too much or inadequate. And we have found, the others have found that up 10% of the population are in that highly sensitive cohort. And what we want to do is determine that early in the chemo treatment cycle, I meant to say, and thus then give that feedback to the physician, such that the physician can then put that patient on a cohort in a treatment cycle of maybe every other day, and this avoids the adverse effects. Short of death, of course, avoids a patient ending up in the intensive care unit. Mm-hmm. And of course, healthcare providers and hospitals in the U.S. and elsewhere, get a demerit in their rankings for the number of patients they end up in the ICU. So we can help provide personalized care that's better for the patient and avoid the ICU visits, avoid the problems that causes the healthcare professionals and the systems, the hospitals. And of course, physicians want to do the best for their patients, but they also want to protect themselves from being sued. So, this is a very inexpensive safety protection mechanism for the physician to implement.
Well, let's talk a bit about your biomarker detection. What exactly is the product in this research called?
We've called the product RadTox to date, and that's because our initial focus was on radiation therapy. Mm-hmm. We're now, as you said, with the Nature publication, we're amping up the focus on chemotherapy too. So we're going to have to put our marketing hats on and come up with a product name for the chemotherapy indication. But it's essentially the same technology behind both to determine which cohort that patient ends up in.
So I understand that there's a difference between cell-free DNA biomarker detection.
Yeah, I guess another one is CT or cancer tumor markers that detect the tumors in the blood system. In this case, we're not really we're detecting a marker with a marker. We're detecting a element in the patient's bloodstream that maybe genetically or based on their physical makeup, indicates to us that they are either in the highly sensitive cohort, the regular is not the right word, but the middle cohort, or in the cohort which is robust. And we've talked about the super sensitive patients for a bit, but the other end of the spectrum is just as troubling in the sense that the normal dosage of chemo doesn't do the trick. When a physician has a diagnosis of a patient in cancer, they want to hit that cancer as early and as hard as they can. And in that robust cohort, we can give the doctor the advice that they may want to increase the level of chemotherapy because those patients can take it without adverse effects. And that would be more effective in terms of treating those patients' cancers than the normal dosage level.
Now, these tests, of course, are dealing with cancer, chemotherapy treatments for cancer, but I understand that you also have COVID-19 tests.
Yeah, you're right. So we were not the first to market with COVID, but when it came along, we said we're very good at cancer. We might be able to help in diagnosing COVID. So we spent a little bit more time and brought to the market two products that have emergency use authorization from the US FDA. And instead of only detecting the spike protein, which everybody's heard about, we're also detecting three elements in COVID so that when the FDA has then evaluated those products on the market, they determine and publish on their website that our two products are in the top three or top four in terms of accuracy. And also that's enabled us to not just detect if one has the original version of COVID, but any of the more recent variants that have come out and they're assigning, I think, Greek letters to define them, but we commonly know them as the UK variant or the South African variant. Mm-hmm. And that's enabled us to detect all of those. And that's been very, very helpful for especially school systems, right? As they're bringing their staff, faculty, and students back to school, and if sporting events are occurring, school systems have wanted to use our tests to test their populations to make sure that everybody is free of COVID.
Richard, give us a website where listeners can learn more about your company, about your test.
Right. That's www.DiaCarta. That's DiaCarta, as in the Latin for map, DiaCarta.com.
Great. www.DiaCarta.com. Richard, I appreciate you joining us here on Health Professional Radio. Maybe we can get an opportunity to speak again.
I look forward to it, Neil. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Richard Brand, CFO of DiaCarta Incorporated. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.